welcome to this week's online video. Hope everybody had a nice holiday weekend and is getting back in the swing of things. I know I am. So this week's lesson is on change models, and there's several different models that we're going to discuss in the class. Obviously, we have our course reading, which presents one theory of how to go about creating change. That being said, the book's model, although most likely pretty effective because of how thorough it is a little bit complex. And it certainly requires resources and a team and some of those types of things, which depending on your situation, you may or may not have. So in addition to the book reading for this week, there were a number of readings on two different change models that I'd like to discuss briefly in this week's video. And it's also the subject matter that will make up your discussion assignment this week, which is due on Thursday, as well as your written assignment, which is due on Saturday. So let's talk about these models in a little bit of detail. So the first model is Kotter's 8-step change model. There were a couple of articles as well as a video on that. And basically what gets presented there is a systematic way for kind of looking at change, but it's more simplistic than what you'll find in your text. So the first step in that change model is to create a sense of urgency. This can be a challenge, lighting a fire under your team and kind of creating excitement or at least the realization that there is a need for something to change. Sometimes that change can come from either financial motivations for a company or a leader kind of just driving change, but sometimes it's also by force. Some of you have actually been writing about those with respect to the companies that you're looking at. When a regulation or something like that changes and businesses need to adapt. So one of those that I'm going through currently is ISO, which is the International Standards Organization, which for many manufacturing companies we have to be certified to do business. Basically, they just came out with a new standard, so now we actually have to adapt to that standard. It's not fun, it's more work. However, we have to put into place a change program to get to where we need to be, or we risk losing that certification. And so creating that sense of urgency and understanding why change is necessary is definitely an important step. The next one is to form a powerful coalition. Your book, when we talked about kind of your A players, your B players, your C players, your D players, kind of gets into this a little bit about how you build your team. But the bottom line is you want to form a coalition of people that you can count on that are going to help cheerlead this project, help get the work done, help motivate their own teams or people or departments to be involved. And with that power, there's that old adage, there's strength in numbers. And so having a powerful coalition actually allows you to kind of gain stakeholders that then can help you celebrate kind of the message of the change and help drive it with their own teams and within their own departments. So powerful coalitions are definitely important. The next is to kind of create that vision for the change. What are we going to do? Where are we at? Where do we want to go? How do we think that change can actually happen? And with that vision, it's also not just coming up with the vision, but also sharing that vision with the people that work for the company so that you can start to build buy-in, that people can start to understand what's going to happen and decide whether they want to be part of that change effort or kind of where they fall on how they feel about the change. So that's next. Once you actually have that vision, going along with that, kind of like what we were just saying, is communicating that vision. Making sure that it's known, that people understand. I've seen some companies where they've had like a little placard or something like that where they've actually written out a mission and they give one out to each employee or they put it on the back of their badge or something like that for work. Those types of things, although it may seem small, that repeated message that happens over and over again can sometimes be really key for driving change. Last week I was in North Carolina and I was visiting a supplier. I noticed that they actually had their quality policy on a little placard on each of the machines. And so I actually wound up asking the quality guy how that came about. And what he told me was that they wanted to improve their quality and to ensure that everybody in the company was committed to quality and understood their role in it. And so they felt like by helping people to understand that message and have it be very clear and present, that it would help drive that. And I thought that was actually a really good idea. And it's actually one that I plan to implement back in our shop as well. Okay, so the next step, we're on step 5 for those that are keeping track, is to remove obstacles and to enable action. So with any change effort, you're going to have challenging situations you run into, either people not being bought in the way that they need to, or financial or time constraints, resource constraints. All of those things can actually um, run down a change effort if you're not careful. And so you have to understand those obstacles and be careful to remove them as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that they don't disrupt the momentum that you sort of build as you're going through these change efforts. And obviously to enable action. You want people to be able to drive that change within their own teams and within their own work environment. And people who feel enabled to do that, and when there's kind of an environment that enables people to do that, it really can help drive your change forward as well, because then suddenly your group of stakeholders is not just that initial powerful coalition group, but it's all the other people. And so it starts to build and build and build. And before you know it, you get enough stakeholders that are in there, you can really drive home just about any change. The next would be to create short-term wins. A lot of times we focus on the pie in the sky, end of the line goal. So if the goal for a change effort, such as what I was discussing about the ISO requirement that we're going through, the end of the day is we want to be compliant and pass our ISO audit to the 2015 standard, which is the new standard that just came out. However, if we don't create short-term wins, sometimes that big goal can feel daunting, or it's hard for the team to kind of break it into components that make it seem a little bit more manageable. So one of the things that we've done is we've broken it into steps. So there's a few different places. We actually had someone come in and conduct an audit for us, which told us where we needed to improve our system related to that standard. And now we're working through an action plan to actually address those things. So over the course of the next year, we will get those things done. And it's a more concerted effort with a team that's planning it and different goals. But there's those short-term wins that we can celebrate step by step as we accomplish things. That helps keep people motivated. It also helps break big cumbersome projects into smaller components. And for a lot of people, that's a lot less daunting and can actually lead to people feeling more positive about your change effort. The next is to, once you have that effort and you're moving those short-term wins and you're getting towards that goal that you have, is to build on the change. You want always be in a state of continuous improvement. So it's actually kind of funny, this class, to me, in some ways, that we're looking at change models and we're looking at, the text, the way it's presented, as though change is something that happens and then kind of goes away. And I don't know about you guys, but in every organization I've ever been part of, change is constant. It is, it's in different areas, it impacts different things, but change is just something that when you work in the business environment, you have to learn to adapt to an extent. And even if that's not your comfort place, or if it is your comfort place, you'll quickly find that being part of these types of projects may come easier to you than it does to some of your colleagues. But I'm a firm believer in continuous improvement. This certainly isn't a course on continuous improvement, although it could be all in itself. Sorry, I lost you guys for a minute there, and I was worried that my video stopped, but it did, so we're back. But basically, again, you want to always have that culture of continuous improvement happening where you're constantly working to improve things. And it's that steady, constant pressure on things that keeps you moving forward. I myself am a firm believer in lean manufacturing and lean techniques. So for those of you that know what I'm talking about, then this idea of continuous improvement may be familiar to you. But for those who that may be a new concept, it's just what it sounds like, that continual, small, gradual change. Don't mind my husband laughing very rudely in the background. He apologizes.
Sorry.
Okay, the last step in the Kotter change model is to anchor those changes in corporate culture. So when you make change, it can't just be kind of a flash in the pan sort of thing. You do want to adjust your culture and try to incorporate the structure that's needed to keep up those change efforts. And the more that you, the more that you do that and can keep your corporate culture reflecting those change efforts that you've actually already been through, the more successful those change efforts will be. And ultimately, as new people come on board to the organization, they'll just be kind of indoctrinated right into that culture. And so it really helps solidify those change efforts. So definitely don't forget that last step. So that is the Cotter 8-step model. I think it's a lot of steps and can probably be broken down a little more simply. However, each step does have a purpose, so I encourage you to look at that model and to see whether it's a good fit for the type of project that you're working on for the semester. The other model that I'd like to discuss is Lowen's change management model. This is a much more simple model, however, I think it's very effective. The way to think about this model is almost if you had a chunk of ice and it was shaped in as a round circle and you wanted to make it into a triangle. To change shape like that, you would actually have to unfreeze that ice, remold it into a different shape, and then refreeze it. And that, though it's kind of interesting to talk about business in the sense of melting ice, it sort of fits with what we're talking about in terms of change models. So the first step in the Lowen model is that you need to unfreeze. So what that means is that you're going to break down whatever existing status quo there is. And I'm sure many of you have heard this in different businesses where people say, well, I don't know why I do it that way. It's just the way we've always done it. Or I don't know the history behind that. It's just the way we've always done it. That complacency with status quo is one of the biggest enemies of business. You know, that existing culture and that existing cling that people hold on to what's familiar, it's actually the complete anti-culture. And so what you have to work through first is breaking down that culture, trying to get people to see that there's a better way. And that's really what that unfreezing process is. This process can be time-consuming and frustrating, and it's generally considered the hardest out of the 3 sections in this model. Getting people to move past what they're used to doing and to be willing to embrace something new is very challenging. So please don't minimize the emphasis that you place on this part if you choose to use this model for your own analysis. What specifically needs to be unfrozen about that culture and change to allow the type of change that you're trying to help them foster to be able to develop and grow. Okay, so the next step is after you have unfrozen your culture, you are going to actually change things. People should hopefully at that point be receptive to new things, and you know, you can show them new ways of doing things and hopefully get those things bought into. This is the buy-in step. It's the part that requires a lot of time and communication here, where you really need to help people understand the whys and help people understand how the changes actually benefit them. That's really what people actually care about when it comes to change. It's not how much money it's going to make the company, although of course as the companies, you know, the people putting on the change effort, that may be your focus. But for the people, it's how do you help them understand how the change is actually going to benefit them in either how they do their job or some other aspect that you're going to convince them to be part of your change effort. So that does take time and communication. However, then you've actually resculpted into a different shape. And then what you do is you refreeze, and that's that anchoring of the change, what we were talking about before with changing your corporate culture and making it a permanent fixture in how things are done. So although this model is seemingly more simple, in reality it actually has many of the exact same steps of the 8-step change model. It's just that the steps are broken down a little bit more simply. It can be a little bit easier, I think, to communicate maybe with your organization that you're working with this model, but certainly it also lacks some of the breakdown of all the detail that the other model has. So depending on your organization and depending on the nature of how you like to think about things, one of these models may appeal better to you than others. I mean, certainly you can also use the text, but I would encourage you guys to focus on these 2 models with respect to your assignments. So let's talk about those a little bit. So your discussion assignment for this week is to describe the change model that you are going to implement for your client. So whether that's the Cotter model or the Lowen model or how your textbook presents things, you're going to look at what techniques are you going to employ and kind of how do you think that it'll work within the context of that organization. In addition, for your responses, I would like you to compare and contrast how you've chosen to look at it for your organization to some of your classmates. They could either be classmates that chose the same model or different models, but the goal is to really look at the pros and cons of the different models as the assignment that is due on Saturday is related to this exact topic. So once you've gone through the discussion, then really what the assignment is actually to do is to apply one of these models to your client and to break it out into the steps and to discuss the different issues that are at play and to basically use this paper to do a change analysis using one of these models for the organization that you've chosen. So I hope that that helps, and I hope that you guys are starting to get into your projects and excited about the companies that you're looking at. I've been very interested in many of the companies that you guys are looking at. I think we have a wide variety of different topics that we're looking at: nonprofits, for-profit businesses, small businesses, large businesses, businesses with one location, many locations, family-owned, corporate-owned. And so that variety is really interesting. And so I encourage you guys to talk on the discussion boards and to really listen to what each other have to say. You guys each have a different perspective based on your industry, your experience, and the way that you approach things. And I think you guys can actually help each other quite a bit. I'll also be on the discussion board this week looking at the analysis that's going on and trying to help you guys with some of your discussion as well. So I hope this video is helpful, and I will make another one next week. So I'll see you guys soon.